What's up and good morning, T-Tam fam. Eric here for Sunday, January 18th, 2026. Another month more than halfway gone. Crazy. Usually January is historically a slow month. Feels like three of them combined in one, but this month, oof, it's kind of jamming on by. So this episode is kind of a finale of things that I have touched on before between peace and potential. So this one is kind of, the finale for choosing peace over potential, right? For a long time, and up until this relationship, I realized I didn't fall in love with people. I fell in love with the potential those people had. And that was a bit of a shocker to me. So what this episode is about, it's where I'm choosing peace going forward rather than potential. And you have to understand that, you can love with your heart, you can love with your eyes, you can love with your brain, but do they align? And that's one thing you have to ask yourself in every relationship. Is it physical? Is it mental? Is it both? Right? Are you falling in love with because that person is quote unquote mirroring you? If you say, hey, listen, I like long walks on the beach, right? Using it as an example. Guess what? The next night, your partner will be like, hey, let's go to the beach, and you go for a long walk, and you're like, oh my god, like this is great. I can't believe this is happening, right? But then again, as a relationship unfolds, you may find that they don't really enjoy that. So it's something where you really have to, find out for yourself in the beginning is if both what you're seeing, what you're hearing, and what you're feeling are all aligned, and you're not trying to fool yourself, which is what I've done in in all my relationships actually. I can be honest and say that because that's just the way that I handled it, the way that I did these things. So, but let's get into it and kind of outlining what potential looks like in real life. It disguises itself as hope. They just need time. They'll open up eventually. They're trying it their own way. Once they heal, it'll be different, right? The connection is rare, and it's worth waiting for. So, out of all of those examples that I just gave you, it's something that they do hold truth. Absolutely. Like you can't force feed anything. You can't move a relationship along just because, right? And everybody has their own ways of doing things. You just have to find out is you know it is this going to affect your peace if you choose to give them more time, or you choose to wait to open up eventually, you know and that is one thing that, looking back at this last relationship, it was slow, great, it was working for us, at least I thought. I did get I don't want to talk about this now, and I respected that, that answer. So I waited, and and just kind of sat there and waited for an answer that was never coming, right? With how they kind of want to do things, you can't fold or you can't shrink into that person, by allowing that, because you essentially are taking your self-worth and you're throwing it away. And that you cannot do. And if they can't rise up or come to a common ground with you at that point, you have your answer. You have to move on. yes, you may have a rare connection. And I will say my last relationship was a rare connection for me. And it was worth waiting for. 100% it was. And that's why I stayed for so long. Is because I fell in love with the potential. Potential feels like patience until it costs you your peace. And that's ultimately what had occurred. And looking back, that, essentially this should have been over months prior, truthfully. But because I am one that does not quit, I am one that sees things out to the end, I am one that, put myself last. And that's why I ended up in this particular position, because, at that particular point, I had made a choice. So I had to live with that choice. Why, let's get along the lines of why potential feels so compelling. And I think I kind of just hit on a couple of them. Taking back from, oh my God, this connection is rare, and it is worth waiting for. Yeah, absolutely, because it's intense, it's physically intense, it's emotionally intense. Chemistry gets mistaken for compatibility. And this is really kind of a big one, because when you look for compatibility, you really have to find within that person. And I will say we were compatible. Well, from the questions that was asked of me, and the questions that I asked of her, we were on the same page. I now understand that there was some truth to it. I'm not going to deny that fact. But then again, it was a mirror tactic, in the sense of where I was basically falling in love with myself, because, oh my God, but because I was saying certain things and just giving her the answers for. So, going back on to, the pull is the thrill of earning love, right? And believing consistency will come later. And then kind of confusing effort with intimacy. So those last three is I was always pushing to show my love. And, wanting my love to be, taken in and held. And, because I held that in a very high respect for me, for her, and that's just kind of how I am. As when I love hard. And, it's a pro and a con, right? At least for me it is. Consistency, I guess, is something where I didn't realize this until kind of after the fact, is I was putting everything into it. As I was putting all of the effort in, showing how consistent I was, while realizing at the end of she was consistently inconsistent, when it came down to certain things. And that was kind of a pretty big wake-up call. So I did get consistency later, but it was just in the form of inconsistency during, right? So, and then, when it came to effort, I realized that I was putting in a lot of the effort, and there was really no effort on the back end, because I had been doing all the work. So, or I was getting a mirrored version of that moment. And that, and that kind of left me with, and that's where the potential kind of kicks in. Potential keeps you emotionally invested, right? And it did, without actually being fulfilled, because I was constantly, you know what? It'll come. It'll come. We got nothing but time. Nothing but time. It'll come. And it never came. And that is the cost of choosing potential. And it just shocked the shit out of my nervous system. You know, it made me more anxious. And anxiety for me was kind of like a normal thing. And I didn't like that, calm feels unfamiliar. You overthink yourself. You self-edit. You wait. You accommodate. You rationalize inconsistency. And I did all of those things. Why? Because I was in love. Because I was in love with the potential. Because I could see down the road what the future was bringing me. And that is something that I truly wanted. So therefore, I was moved into kind of these roles. And it was unfamiliar to me, but because I had made a promise to myself, I was going to follow through on my word for this relationship. So, when you choose potential, or you choose to shrink, or you choose to put yourself last, like, this is the end result. And you have to be mindful of that. Because choosing potential slowly teaches your nervous system that instability is normal. And the one thing that I've learned throughout this whole process is that your nervous system is key. If you are not regulated, you shouldn't be in a relationship. Simple as that. Like, if you have problems, you shouldn't be in that relationship. You should be man enough or woman enough to say, hey, listen, I appreciate it, but right now, I don't want to be in a relationship. And that's where self-awareness comes in. No matter how much you like them, no matter how much you guys potentially are click, because you haven't taken care of yourself first. And if you don't take care of yourself first, then there's no point. Absolutely no point in being in a relationship. So, excuse me. This part right here is where, peace became more attractive. And I noticed this in July of 25. Our last big break, and this was something where, this is when I started this whole journey, and this is where I started the growth, and this is where I started to find peace through everything. And when the breakup occurred, I was like, I had already mentally kind of prepared myself, because I knew something was wrong. I didn't know what was wrong, but I knew it wasn't anything to do with me. Like, that is one thing. So I had prepared myself that towards the end in October, the last time that we had a separation, if you will, I knew the wheels for her had started back in July. So, taking that July time frame, and really kind of, being like, something just isn't right. Sorry. I could feel the shift go on. And like, I prepared myself from July during that time frame of, whatever happens here on out is gonna happen. So I had mentally prepared for the good, the bad, and the ugly. So when it came down to the breakup, it wasn't dramatic. Not for me. There was no argument. There was no explosion for me. It was, you know, it was something where I've realized that I was more tired than hopeful. And that really kind of told me everything. I was tired of the games. I was tired of, no communication. I was tired of the space because I was with a person that she could not face things. She could not process things quickly, I should say. And, to me as an adult, you should be able to. You should be able to process stuff within 1 to 2 days. And, when that didn't happen, at that point in time, it was, why? Why am I going to continue, fighting for something that doesn't want to be fought for? And, ultimately, like, if somebody chooses to walk away, which she did, I'm not going to chase. I'm not going to chase. Why? Because if she really wanted to be with me, she would be with me. It's that simple. But, so during that time from like July to August, learning about, peace and acquiring it, peace it showed up as quiet. It's predictable. A little bit boring, absolutely, because you go from all the noise to nothing. It allowed me to become emotionally steady and safe. So, with that being said, like, what does peace feel like? Here's some kind of concrete terms. There's no emotional whiplash. There's no guessing. There's no decoding. There's no chasing. There's no emotional bargaining. And there's no contrast explanation. So this is why, looking at that and being honest with myself and with her is that, me personally, there's none of that anymore. There's no more emotional whiplash, and that's a fucking bitch of a thing, man. I tell you, like, dealing with that in real time is fucking bananas. I'll tell you, like, that was just wild. But because I had started to see the overall picture and see how everything was kind of unfolding, it allowed me to be able to clear that, because eventually her hand was shown. But here's kind of a key point. Peace isn't the absence of love. It's the absence of anxiety. Think about that. When you remove the anxious parts, what happens? So you get to sit back and you get to relax, because you can now see things clearly. And that is peace. So, at first, peace wasn't comfortable, because I was used to, for almost 2 years, I was used to a certain way. Now that way was gone. That ball had stopped. That noise had gone bye-bye, because, peace lacks adrenaline. There are no emotional spikes. There's no drama. And there's no constant reassurance needed. And there are some people that like to live in chaos. They're used to it. That's, they're bred for it, and it starts from it starts from childhood, how they grew up, how they handled things, especially as a child. And here's the thing: is I can't blame the person for going through a childhood because it wasn't their fault. It's the only way that they knew, because that's what was being shown to them, that was being taught to them by their parents, by family, by friends. Like, so here's the thing is you can go through childhood issues, you can go through childhood dramas and stuff like that, but at the end of the day is if you reflect on yourself and how you grew up, and that's kind of how, like, I do with my things, is I took those instances where they weren't pleasant, but I also learned from them and said to myself, hey, I'm not going to put myself in this situation going forward, because it doesn't help the situation. You don't want to be a victim, and that's all that does, is it just makes you the victim in every situation. Every situation, whether you're right or wrong. And that to me is a problem. I cannot stand that. So, you know, if chaos felt similar, peace will feel empty at first until your nervous system learns it's safe. And that's why you have to do the inner work. You have to, learn how to regulate yourself. It's kind of like, I don't know if you, if you're not a parent, but if you're a parent, it's like ferberizing, right? What happens when your kid is crying is you let them self-soothe. You let them find a way to self-soothe. Now, does that happen? No, absolutely not. When I was married, my my daughter was in the bed, for pretty much the first 2 years of her life, and beyond. And that's something that, did I agree with? No, I didn't. But then again, you know, it was me keeping the peace with my wife at the time. So, but it's like ferberizing. You have to just let them figure it out. Let them get the help. Let them try and self-soothe. And that's one of the things with when you have somebody that ultimately can't face the reality. They don't want to face it because it's too difficult. And that's where accountability comes in. So awareness and accountability are huge, huge, huge with me. Because when you do choose peace, that's a decision. It's not a feeling, it's a decision. And just like everything that happens to you after the fact is a decision, or it's a choice. Like if you had a rough childhood, I'm sorry. Really, I am sorry that you had to experience that rough childhood. But in the same token, is you had a rough childhood and you have problems from it, work on yourself to get them resolved. Like that's really what it is don't bring that crap into a new relationship or even into today, because you will never grow. Excuse me. You will never grow. But back to, a decision and not a feeling when it comes to peace is, peace doesn't beg for attention. It doesn't promise the future, and it doesn't rush intimacy, but it lets you breathe. Think about that. Those who live in chaos love attention. I don't care whether it's in person, whether it's online, whether it's in the neighborhood, whether it's in the house. Chaos loves attention. Peace does not beg for it. And peace doesn't promise the future. Those who like to play games, those who lie, or those who don't know exactly what they're doing, but they're doing it, That's, that's still kind of a mind bender to me. It's how can you say something and then not follow through with it? But that's just me, I guess. So I kind of wanted to, close this out with, a final line. I didn't choose peace because I stopped believing in people. I chose peace because I started believing in myself. And when you believe in yourself, it's amazing how many doors open. When you change your mindset, when you get yourself out of that, cycle, if you will, um, things do change. It's a slow change. It's not going to happen immediately. I'll tell you that right now. But you will see changes. You will feel certain things. And you just have to, again, believe in yourself. Why? It's so important to, journal, write things down, set your goals, achieve your goals, have your checklist, stay diligent to that. And I guarantee you will get what you're looking for in a period of time. What that time frame is totally up to you. How fast or how slow do you want to work on it? And if you can do that, you will get peace. I guarantee you. Absolutely guarantee you. Another thing is you have to learn how to say yes, and you have to learn how to say no. And saying no is a lot harder than it is to say yes in most situations. But again, if you don't look out for yourself, and you don't take care of yourself, and you don't value yourself, and you don't put yourself first, then guess what? You're going to be a yes man, which ultimately turns into a doormat, a welcome mat. People are just going to rub their feet all over you, dirty you up, and not even care. And this is why it's so important to choose you and to believe in yourself. It was a good one. And I'm slowly learning that when it comes to the peace and the more that I reflect back on, where I was to where I am now in this time frame. Just past the 3-month marker since the breakup, and it's kind of like night and day. And realistically, it's to me, it's now learning to feel with both of my heart, but also my brain at the same time. And that's one challenge that, I work on every single day. But I don't give up on it, simply because I was able to be shown what I needed and what I had to work on. And for that, I'm grateful, honestly. Again, I take all of these as a chance to learn, as a chance to evolve and expand. Because that's the only way that you're going to be better for yourself going forward. But with that being said, today is Sunday. Sunday. I got the gym coming up, and then I got a client later on this afternoon. I got to do some yard work. I'm actually not going to church tomorrow. Kind of taking a break from it. Last sermon didn't really hit me with the way that I thought it would, and it kind of moved me away. So, gonna take tomorrow. Take today off, and then kind of get back at it. Hopefully next week. But we will see. But until then, hey, it's time to rise and grind. Time to get your Sunday going. Have a day. Drink your water. Get your gym in. Get your fitness in. Get your workouts in. Do that. We're actually supposed to get absolutely pelted with snow later on this afternoon, so it'll be interesting. But with that being said, again, I appreciate you all. If you like my content, you like my videos, make sure you like the video, like and subscribe. New episodes every Sunday, 7 a.m. Eastern Time, with some special episodes sprinkled in, which hopefully I'll get to one next week. There's been a topic I've kind of been exploring. I'm not going to say it right now, but I think it may come up with a special episode next week. But until then, hey, appreciate you guys always. Have a great Sunday.